Hi, my name's John, and for those of you who aren't familiar, I'm working on getting my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And so today, I'm going to be revisiting the Counseling Student Reacts series to look at one of Dr. Maruki's unused sessions with Ryuji that was uncovered by the YouTube user Faz. So make sure to give their channel a look, and big thank you to Lcrest on Twitter for telling me that this was even a thing. So if you like this kind of content, you want to see more of it coming from this channel, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and why don't you even ring that notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure to share this video wherever you like sharing things to help us reach our goal by the end of December of getting 7,500 subscribers. But with all of that out of the way, let's just jump into the video. Alright, starting out like usual. Promised and all. Very blunt. And so, I love how Ryuji is just being so Ryuji and just laying everything out there on the table. Saying that, okay, so you're expecting me to talk all about Kamoshida. And so, it's looking like this is their first session. And it's more of, not really a new counseling session, but more an alternative version of the counseling session that we actually see in Persona 5 Royal, which is really interesting to see how the writers were kind of thinking, oh, this is another way that this session could have gone. So I'm super curious as to how this is going to be playing out, but I really like how Maruki does this. He does this in the actual session as well, just saying, no, this isn't an interrogation. And this is so important in a counseling session, especially with students like Ryuji who may be required to be coming into counseling. They don't really have a choice. A lot of times they'll think that there's this big power dynamic, like you're the counselor, you're expecting them to spill their guts about everything that's going wrong in their lives, and that can be kind of a tough hurdle to overcome. And so it's good that Maruki is framing this as, this isn't an interrogation. We don't necessarily need to talk about the Kamoshida incident at all. We can talk about whatever we want to talk about. And that's so good. That's such a spectacular way to approach this, to kind of tear down those preconceived notions and tear down those walls so that they can have more of an open-ended dialogue and start actually building rapport, or building that sense of trust between the two of them before Ryuji feels comfortable with kind of getting into that more emotional or internal kind of stuff. So, awesome. Great start. Let's see where it goes. Like, what? So again, this is something that Dr. Maruki does in their actual session. And I love how he's like, no, we don't have to get into that. This isn't an interrogation. Probably to keep it much more open-ended, much more of a comfortable environment for Ryuji to talk. But when you're dealing with high school boys, and this is going to be a broad generalization, and not all high school boys are like this, but really just high schoolers in general, probably isn't the go-to question to ask them if they're already kind of hesitant about being in this whole counseling thing. And so I would highly recommend not going this route, because that could kind of put Ryuji on the defensive. Kind of like, okay, I'm already uncomfortable. I'm way more uncomfortable because I don't want to talk about who I like with Dr. Maruki or whatever his name is. And so, because they don't have that existing rapport, because essentially they've just met, maybe not the move. Maybe at some point, if they'd met a couple times, they'd started getting therapeutic relationship established, this could be something that you could talk about. Right now, probably not the move, though. So, okay, it's just Maruki's awkward shining through. It's not like damaging. This won't emotionally traumatize him, but it's so uncomfortable. Oh dear. And he says to himself, that's not exactly easy to talk about either. But, unlike in their initial conversation, I think I'm actually going to change my tune on this a little bit. Because the way he responds here, specifically in his vocal inflection, when he's saying like, oh, sorry, why don't we chat about the future then? It plays it off as much more of a lighthearted, open environment, kind of joking, kind of bringing a little bit of levity into the session. Like, he very easily could have been like flustered and like made things much more awkward, which is a very Maruki thing to do. But he doesn't do that. He apologizes and then transitions pretty seamlessly to talking about the future. And I actually really, really appreciate and like that, because every counselor is going to make mistakes. Every counselor might kind of poke into an area that maybe they shouldn't have gone. And so being flexible to be able to, okay, my bad, let's redirect, kind of shows kind of the humanity in the counselor. Like, sorry, shouldn't have gone there, you're right, my bad. And instead, let's try talking about this instead. So good on Maruki for being so reflexive and working with Ryuji in such a natural way. So, okay. Already doing better than the first one. The future. And, okay. Very vague answer from Ryuji. Not exactly what he meant. And he's reframing it. Now, I love that for a number of different reasons, that whole interaction. Because while Ryuji didn't really understand what Maruki was trying to ask in the first place, Maruki accepted Ryuji's answer. He acknowledged it. He made sure that Ryuji was heard. But then he's like, that's not exactly what I was getting at, though. And then he reframes it for Ryuji. So he doesn't really dismiss what Ryuji said, which is so important, to never dismiss what your client is saying. But he also is able to kind of redirect, get it back on course, and state what he intended to say in a much more clear way. And this is an actual therapeutic technique. It's called the miracle question. And so the miracle question is exactly kind of what it sounds like. It frames it just like Maruki does here, where it's like, if you were to wake up tomorrow and a miracle happened and all of the worries and concerns in your life just magically disappeared, what's the first thing that you would notice? Or how would you know that this miracle had occurred? What would be different? And so this has a number of uses. For Maruki, there are two distinct ones. One therapeutic, one less than therapeutic. The therapeutic use of this is to help us to determine as counselors what the client is striving to achieve. What are their goals? Where would they like to be in life? What is that ideal situation for them? What does that look like? And if they can articulate that, that helps us to kind of be more congruent with, okay, this is where they want to get to. And now we can start working with that client as to how do we actually get there? And so that's a great way to use this question. And I think it's great that he asked it. But as we all know, Dr. Maruki has some ulterior motives a lot of times. And so this is also a much more organic way for Maruki to get information from Ryuji in a therapeutic way. Because in the initial session, he just kind of brings up topics that he wants to know about, and he kind of pulls them from Ryuji, and he's very much controlling that conversation, what Ryuji says, and he's looking for very specific answers. But in this way, he's letting Ryuji kind of guide the conversation. Yeah, he's the one who brought up the future, but he's not forcing Ryuji to say anything. He's not looking for anything. He's not the one that brought up track and field like we'll see that Ryuji is about to. And so he is able to know what Ryuji's goals are for his actualization that we know that happens in the 3rd semester. He learns that from Ryuji's mouth, and there's still a good counseling session that was the basis for this, assuming everything else in this goes well. And so I like this so much from a counseling perspective, at least, so much more than in the actual game. So good on you, Maruki. And he says the track team. And I love this reflection that he does, saying, you really love running, don't you? Because he probably knows that Ryuji loves running and track and field already. And so just pointing that out kind of shows that he waited for Ryuji to bring it up. He didn't bring it up himself. And the emotional reciprocity he gives in this session is spectacular, because he apologizes to Ryuji because he didn't mean to be so cheerful or upbeat about Ryuji's injury. And while this is a goal that Ryuji in an ideal world would have, it's a little bit, at the moment at least, a little bit incongruent with what he's actively able to do right now. So since Ryuji went low, Maruki kind of mirrored that and reflected that feeling. And I think that that's so good because he's very in tune with the session. It's clear he's very much aligning with Ryuji and joining with him in that session, kind of showing that level of empathy. And honestly, I'm not sure I've said this many good things about Maruki in a counseling session. So awesome. I'm I'm glad that these exist. Okay. It's very striking to me that Ryuji's just so open in this lost scene. That sounds like a line from an old TV show. And I like that little interaction that they have there, because it really hits at Maruki's mindset. If you wish something, it can come true. But I love that he said, if it's possible, I hope that you don't give up on that dream. Meaning that if this is a dream that has any realm and possibility, he's not saying do not give up this dream, because maybe he doesn't know the full extent of Ryuji's injury. Maybe Ryuji's knee will never be fixed. I know that in the back of his mind, he's probably thinking about his actualization, that he may be the one to resolve this dream in his mind. But he's saying, if it's possible, don't give up on that dream. Which, in my opinion, is a really good choice of words, because it's acknowledging Ryuji's experience, probably acknowledging that he's probably feeling some type of way about his knee injury, as he very clearly illustrated to us in this session. And so I love that he is trying to be empowering and trying to be motivational, because when it comes down to it, empowering the client and helping them to achieve their goals, whatever those goals are, is the counselor's job. And taking that one step at a time, not jumping from 0 to 100, but even just trying to find some level of additional congruency between where you're at and where you want to be. Even if maybe you'll never get exactly where you want to be, how can you get to a place where you're more satisfied? And I think that that's kind of what he's working at. And in subsequent sessions, maybe they could explore this more. Like, okay, maybe you aren't able to use your leg, or maybe you aren't able to run as well as you used to be able to. But how can we reach a point where maybe you're a bit more satisfied than you are now? And so I think Maruki's handling this pretty freaking well, considering. So, okay. What do you want to do, Sakamoto? And then the session pretty much plays out exactly like it did in the initial meeting between the two of them, where Ryuji wants juice. He gets juice from Dr. Maruki. And that he said, Maruki, you're kind of weird. So I loved being able to watch this unused scene from Dr. Maruki, because it really solidified my assumptions from the writers that they were very intentional about making Dr. Maruki kind of an incompetent counselor in his sessions. Because in the actual one that they used in the game, there's a lot more fluster and bluster, and Dr. Maruki making slip-ups that most counselors would know to avoid, which, if you want to see all of my thoughts on the actual session, I'll make sure to post the link to that in the description down below as well. Because it's not nearly as good as this. This was a very good, intentional session. Even with the slip-up of, who do you have a crush on, which could have been awkward, he played it off so incredibly well, and everything felt much more organic throughout the course of the session. And while I think it could be argued that maybe Ryuji wasn't necessarily as in character or as resistant as you would have expected him to be, maybe he just really got good vibes from Dr. Maruki. Really, as a counselor, that would be the ideal session. And that's what you would want from a client. Someone being very open and forthcoming with how they're having their internal experience. Because when it comes down to it, a counselor can only do so much. And if someone is not willing to work with you, if someone's not willing to be an active participant in counseling, there's only so much that the counselor is able to do. But because Ryuji in this session was able to partner with him very quickly, they had a lot more room to converse and talk about all of these different things. And instead of Dr. Maruki bringing up very heavy-handedly Ryuji's track incident, Ryuji brought it up in this, which was so much better. I don't know, I have just so much more positive stuff to say, and I can't really pinpoint anything that I would say this was objectively bad. It's unfortunate that because it was an unused scene, we don't get to see body language or anything like that. But, I don't know, overall, this was spectacular, and yeah, good on you, Maruki. I wish we had seen more stuff kind of like this in the actual game. But I want to pass the question off to you guys. How did you feel about this counseling session? Did you like it? Did you not like it? And would you like to see me cover more of these unused counseling sessions from Dr. Maruki? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And while you're at it, why not liking the video, why not subscribing to the channel, and why not even ring that notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure to share this video wherever you like sharing things. It helps the channel out so incredibly much as we are working to get to 7,500 subscribers before the end of the year. But as always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, a fantastic rest of your week, and why not even a fantastic rest of your month. And I will see you in the next video. Later.